Hi guys, it's Tayana J. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video is completely different from how I normally record. As you can see, I am at work already, but I did want to get this video out to you guys. Today's topic is how therapy changed my life and how it can change yours as well. So it's a cleaning video, but we are going to be discussing these topics. I really needed to clean my house, but between work, the kids, and my son's birthday party, I kind of lost track of time. So to kill two birds with one stone, I decided, hey, why not just record myself cleaning and we can still discuss everything that needs to be discussed. So without further ado, let's get into the video. So, the state of your home can significantly affect your mental health. Conditions like clutter, overcrowding, lack of maintenance is often linked to increased stress, anxiety, and depression. And a well-maintained, comfortable home can positively impact your well-being by providing a sense of safety and relaxation. It can lead to feelings of overwhelm and anxiety, making it very, very hard to relax. And so this video, while I am going to be talking about therapy, I felt like I needed to reset my home because it has been neglected all week and it was starting to affect my mental health. And I just felt like, hey, let's just do a video of me cleaning while I tell you guys how therapy is such a great way to change your mental health and change your life. So one tool that my therapist used with me is EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And EMDR is a psychotherapy technique that helps individuals process and heal from traumatic memories by having you recall the event while simultaneously focusing on back and forth eye movement or other bilateral stimulation like tapping or sounds. And it's believed that it'll allow the brain to reprocess the memory and reduce its emotional charge, leading to a lessening of distress associated with the traumatic experience. So what happens is your therapist has you recall a specific disturbing memory while engaging in that stimulation, and it allows you to confront the memory in a controlled environment. While you're focusing on the memory, while experiencing that stimulation, you may notice shifts in how you perceive the event. For example, with me, my father was an every other weekend parent, and so there would be times where I would sit out on the porch waiting for him to come and he didn't show up, and eventually it went from me waiting for him to show up to I'm not even going to pack a bag until I see he's pulled up in the yard. And reprocessing that, it brought up emotions and beliefs that I didn't even realize were there. And it really helped manage my anxiety because I was having panic attacks and phobias, and I was having really bad anxiety, and doing EMDR really helped process all of that for me. And I do want to let you know that EMDR and therapy in general isn't a quick fix. It's actually something that involves multiple sessions to fully address your traumatic memories. It takes a while. It's not going to happen at the very first session with your therapist. So I would tell you not to go into it thinking you're going to be one and done. This is actually 2 years in the making for me seeing a therapist, and we're just now at the phase where I feel that I have healed enough to be able to move on in my life. And it also helps me to face and name my triggers. And so that leads me to the next point is understanding what your triggers are and how therapy can help you recognize them. So It's important because it helps you manage your emotions and develop coping strategies. Triggers can be deeply personal and can cause intense emotional reactions that can be difficult to address. Therapy provides a safe space to identify triggers and explore the reason behind them. Understanding why triggers are important can help with your personal growth, and it's a critical part of emotional healing. And understanding triggers can help you develop coping strategies to manage your symptoms. And identifying triggers can also help you avoid or alter situations that might trigger you. And it gives you a sense of control. It helps you to feel more in control of your life. And a lot of times people don't know what a trigger even is. A trigger could be a specific word or a phrase. It can be a social situation. The presence of a particular person can trigger you. A certain song, a memory, a smell, a sound, a certain time of day. I'm pretty sure you can hear a song from the 90s, or you can hear a song that you haven't heard in a while, and you'll instantly go back to either your first time hearing that song, or you'll go back to a time where something happened while that song was playing for you. Therapy helped me identify my triggers and explore the reasons behind them. And my therapist helps me learn to communicate more productively and to also heal my source of my triggers. So for example, if you realize that feeling criticized in a meeting is a trigger for you to become defensive and argumentative, once you identify this trigger, you can proactively prepare yourself to listen calmly, take a moment to process feedback before responding, and also ask clarifying questions to better understand the intent behind the comments. And it'll ultimately lead to a more controlled and productive response in similar situations. So, a key thing to remember is to identify what that trigger is. So you'll recognize that feeling criticized is what triggers your defensive reaction. And then you have to empower control. So once you're aware of the trigger, you can actively manage your response by taking conscious steps to remain calm and collected. And the outcome is, by managing your reaction, you can engage in more constructive conversations and avoid unnecessary conflict. And that leads me to pinpointing your emotions. So it's important to go beyond labeling emotions as just sad or angry. Many times we use those words and we stick with it, but it's more than just being sad, and it's more than just being angry. We all have emotional hot buttons. Something happens, a person says something to us, we read an email, and all of a sudden it's like a button has been pushed and we're grabbed by intense emotional reactions. We were feeling fine a moment earlier, but then certain kinds of events happen, and in a millisecond we're upset, thrown off balance, and irrational. And we may find ourselves acting out of control in ways that are extremely unskillful and even sometimes damaging to ourselves and others. And triggers are events that tend to catapult us instantly into highly emotional reactions, often way out of proportion to the event itself. And after we calm down, that's when we look back and regret things we may have said or done while in this altered state of reactivity. And when triggered, our capacity to think clearly and to act wisely is seriously impaired. If you ever look at the mistakes that you've made, the things you later regretted saying and doing, many of these were impulsive reactions from your hot buttons being pushed. And the ability to master our emotional reactivity is a core competence for leaders. Scientifically speaking, it helps monitor our reactions and choices of how we speak and act. Triggering is sometimes called emotional hijacking. Because when triggered, control of our reactions is seized by a part of the brain. And it's an almond-shaped group of neurons called the amygdala. And it's located deep in the medial temporal lobes of our brain. And it's the part of the system that plays a primary role in the processing of memory and emotional reactions. And it also regulates our fight or flight response. And we hear fight and flight a lot, and it serves an important evolutionary function. When danger is sensed, it signals our bodies to release massive amounts of stress-related hormones and peptides. And your heart rate and blood pressure increase to give you extra energy. Blood is diverted to your arms and legs to provide more power. You sweat more to prevent overheating. Your muscles tense to allow you to attack or to flee. And because rapid response is critical in these life-threatening situations, our brain receives signals and reacts milliseconds before our cortex has a chance to process information. When triggered, we're basically incapable of dealing with the situation at hand, and we usually make a mess. And then when the rush of hormones subsides, we realize too late that we reacted inappropriately. In order to better manage our own emotional triggers, it's important to be aware of the things that tend to trigger us and understand the deeper feelings that are being triggered and where they come from. Why do certain things cause you to react so strongly? And what from your past is being reactivated? So the very first thing you need to do is list out your triggers. So you need to name it. Naming it identifies what's happening. Saying to yourself, I'm triggered, that's just the beginning. Simply naming for yourself that you're triggered doesn't make it stop. Your stress hormones will still be racing through your body. Your emotions will still be on high. However, the moment you say to yourself, I'm triggered, instead of going into fight or flight, you now have a chance to really process what's going on. So the next step after you name it is to take space. Don't act when triggered. Just find some relatively graceful way of removing yourself from the triggering situation. Then you want to shift your mind state so that way you can gain some form of inner clarity and balance. And then you respond rather than react. So step one in naming it can be more difficult than it seems, because when we're triggered, we can't think clearly. We're not even smart enough to recognize that we're triggered. But there are certain things that get set off in our mind and body when we're triggered. And so by studying our own reactions and learning our particular telltale signs, we can more and more easily begin to name it. Some of the most common telltale signs are physical sensations. Our minds lie all the time, especially when triggered. You shouldn't trust any of your thoughts when you're triggered, but our bodies tell the truth. Very often there are clear physical sensations that will tell us we're triggered. Our stomach or our jaw begins to clench. We feel hot. Our eyes begin to water. We stop breathing or we start hyperventilating. By noticing these particular body sensations, we may be able to identify that we are triggered. Another sign is judging your thoughts. For many of us, the first place our minds go when we're triggered is to start blaming the other person or situation. We get defensive. All our years of education and life experience go into finding fault with the person or thing that triggered us. This might be someone who we love or respect in our normal state of mind, but when we're triggered, they're the enemy. Another sign could be difficulty paying attention, dissociation, exhaustion, and escaping to fantasies. For those of us that tend more towards flight than fight, our signs of being triggered might be spacing out. I know for me, that was my number one thing. I can dissociate like it's nobody's business. You could be screaming in my face and I will not be there. Also, you can suddenly feel drained or exhausted or have difficulty thinking. These reactions are typical in those of us who tend to avoid conflict. We may indulge in escape fantasies. We're triggered at work and instantly we're at our next job where people really appreciate all that we do. Or all of a sudden we lose all of our energy as if the life is drained out of us and we can't think straight. These are telltale signs you have been taken over by the impulse to flee or to freeze. Another sign is defensiveness. You find yourself pleading your case, justifying yourself, making your argument and counter arguments. This may be out loud to a person that triggered you or venting to a third party. A sure sign you're triggered is when it's hours after the triggering event, you're all alone and you're still going at it, complaining how you were wronged or why it's not your fault, as if there was some imaginary judge in the sky listening to your rant and who would somehow agree. Good point, you're right. You could obsessively repeat your thought patterns. Like, have you ever seen a hamster running around and around in one of those wheels? Have you ever experienced your mind doing this, replaying the same events over and over again, sometimes to the point of exhaustion? That is a trigger. Emotional outbursts. When we're triggered, sometimes we just lose it. Our emotional hijacking leads right to inappropriate outbursts of fleeing. There are many times when it's completely appropriate to share what we feel, but the telltale signs of triggering is when feelings come bursting out without conscious thoughts in ways that we are likely later to regret. Another sign is sudden intensive engagement in addictive behavior. In addictive behaviors. We suddenly find ourselves surfing the internet, on social media, binge eating. If you like to drink or smoke, if you have an addiction, that's literally where you go when you're triggered. So the sooner you recognize that you're triggered, the easier it is to begin the practice of state shifting into your zone of leadership. Some tools that I like to use to help me when I'm triggered are breathing. I like to do mind-body practices like yoga or stretching, because when we're triggered, we typically start either holding our breath or hyperventilating, and it creates that panicky feeling like when we've been underwater too long. So just the simple thing of breathing, taking deep breaths. It sounds so small, but it is so effective, especially if we catch our triggering early before we spiral out of control. Another tool is to move. So one of the most powerful and quickest ways to shift out of a triggered state is to engage in any form of vigorous physical exercise. Dancing, jogging, going to the gym, getting on a bike, anything that gets the heart pumping. Also singing, using your voice, all these increase the flow of oxygen, and it helps consume the excess energy created by the fight or flight response, and it releases endorphins that evoke feelings of well-being. Also, feeling your feelings. It is okay to feel your feelings. Nature has provided us with a simple and effective method for dealing with emotions. Like you can look at a child. If they're sad or hurt, instantly they cry. They cry and then it passes and they're right back to being that bubbly little kid. Sometimes when we've been triggered, what we actually need is to just allow ourselves to feel it, especially the deeper emotions that lie underneath our first triggered response. Sometimes we need to soften our heart and to give space for our more tender, more vulnerable feelings. Another tool you can use is self-soothing. When we're triggered, we're a bit like a frightened animal or a young child. Various forms of self-soothing can be useful options, like sitting down with a cup of tea, taking a bath, going outside barefoot, listening to soft music. Whatever you find nurturing and helpful in calming your nervous system, tap into that. Tap into that inner child. Another one, meditation or prayer. Baby, take it to Jesus, I'm telling you. Any form of spiritual practice, they're powerful tools. It's highly effective. They've been studied for thousands of years, and it also helps to have developed a foundational practice before you try to make use of these in a triggered situation. So if you've never prayed before, don't think prayer while being triggered is what's going to help you. If you have an active prayer life, I feel prayer is one of the best ways to handle being triggered. You can also do things like yoga. You can connect to your purpose, a calling or a mission. Draw on the power of the dedication to help others when you're triggered. So when you're triggered by a colleague, remember the power of your commitment to your purpose. We always put our disturbance into perspective, and we hold fast to that higher purpose like a lifeline, and it lifts us out of our triggered state. Another one that I like to use is humor. Humor is one of the greatest healing forces for human beings. Rather than getting frustrated at ourselves for being triggered, it can be immensely liberating to begin to cultivate a sense of self-humor about our triggers. Especially as we become intimately familiar with our triggers, it's possible to begin gently poking fun at ourselves. But be very careful about making fun of other people's triggers. Just so you know, this is you laughing at yourself, not laughing at other people. Another tool you can use is changing your physical environment. So go to a different room, or if you can, go outside. Deep relaxation. Our muscles tense up when we're triggered. If surroundings permit, sit back or lie down, close your eyes. Bring your awareness to different parts of your body. As you find any areas that seem tight, just breathe and tell those muscles to relax. Lie down on your back with your palms facing up. It decreases the heart rate, it lowers your blood pressure, it decreases muscle tension, and it's the perfect antidote to the fight or flight characteristics of triggering. You can also ask yourself questions. Why did I react so strongly? What is being triggered in me from my past? Am I absolutely sure that the meaning I have made of the situation is true? Is it absolutely true that this person is out to get me, that the situation is hopeless? This will definitely lead to something terrible. Ask yourself these questions. Is there another interpretation of events that might also be true? Is there possibly some opportunity for me in this situation? Our rational mind gets hijacked when we're triggered, and the perceptions that drive the trigger are often distorted, and the assumption and beliefs that fan the flames are almost always flawed. And with using this self-reflection tool, you begin to use now functioning to unpack what actually is and is not going on. And you can inquire as to why our reactions are out of proportion to the situation. You can also anchor. So anchoring, when a boat is rocky, it's possible to move it by tossing and securing the anchor in the desired direction. The same thing we can do in our minds. We create anchors before we get triggered so we can draw on the tool when we need it. We begin by identifying what it feels like in our body when we are in touch with our inner power. We then create a physical, visual, or auditory cue that can serve as an anchor to pull us back into our zone. And that can be anything from body posture or visualizing a source of power, like an image from nature, like the river or sun or an animal or a person who inspires us. Or you can create a short phrase, a series of words that evokes your sense of inner power, like I am at peace. I am a warrior of justice. When triggered, linked with deep breaths, we repeat our phrases like an affirmation or a mantra to help evoke our inner power, our zone of leadership. Because it's performed internally, the beauty of the anchoring technique is that it can be done in a public setting. Although I've shared all of these tools that can help you with identifying triggers and working through trauma, I am in no way a licensed therapist. So I feel like the best thing for you to do would be to find your own therapist that you can speak to. Therapy literally changed the way I look at life for the better. My anxiety no longer takes over. I understand that in our culture, mental health is something that gets swept under the rug so many times. So there's a big stigma around seeking therapy, but I do want to let you know it does help. It's such a wonderful tool to use. It can relieve your depression, anxiety, and other mental health conditions. Therapy helps you understand yourself better, including your thoughts, your emotions, and your patterns. It can help you identify how these factors may be preventing you from moving forward in life. It can identify root causes of your worries and develop better ways to deal with stress. It can help you learn to accept your flaws and your imperfections, and it can lead to a stronger sense of self-confidence and self-love. It can help you learn how to resolve conflicts in a constructive way. It can help you improve your relationship with others. It can even help improve your physical well-being by lowering your blood pressure and reducing chronic pain. Like the brain is tied to so much in our life that mental health should be just as important as going to the doctor and getting a physical exam done once a year. So I am one of the biggest advocates for seeking therapy, and it's a skill to finding a good therapist. And so I'm just going to give you, a quick few tips that can help you find a therapist for you. The first thing you want to do is identify your needs. Think about what you want to address in therapy. That can be trauma, anxiety, or relationship issues. Again, for me, when I first joined therapy, I wanted to learn how to become a better wife and a better mom. And in turn, I discovered how to become a better me. I discovered that I lacked boundaries. I discovered that I was a big-time people pleaser. I discovered that I was an overachiever because I felt like that was tied to my worth. The more that I do, the more I value myself. I learned so much about myself. And knowing your needs will help you find a therapist who specializes in those areas. Also, to research different therapy modalities. There's various types of therapy. There's cognitive behavioral therapy, there's EMDR therapy, there's psychodynamic therapy. There's just therapists that will just let you vent for the full hour. You have to decide what approach resonates with you the most. What is it that you feel will help you better understand yourself? The next thing you want to do is check their credentials. Ensure that that therapist is licensed and has the appropriate qualifications. So you'll want to see behind their name LCSW, LMFT, or PhD. And check their experience with your specific concerns, because one therapist may be a therapy specializing in sexual trauma, whereas another therapist may be someone who specializes in post-traumatic stress disorder, and someone else specializes in just postpartum depression. You want to make sure that they align with whatever it is that you're trying to work on. Also, ask for referrals. Ask friends, family, healthcare professionals, anyone. You're watching this video, this is a referral for recommendations. Personal referrals often provide reliable insight into a therapist's effectiveness. I will not share who my therapist is because y'all are not about to take up all of her calendar space for me. But I found her on therapyforblackgirls.com. You can also use Alma, which is ALMA. You can also use BetterHelp.com. All of these websites give you a list of therapists in your area, and you can use that to look at their reviews, and from there look for compatibility. Choose someone you're comfortable with. Again, I found my therapist on therapyforblackgirls.com because I myself am a black girl, and we instantly connected. And our first session, I felt like she heard me, and that's very important. You need to assess whether you feel heard, respected, and understood. Because the therapeutic relationship, having a good relationship with your therapist, is crucial to progress. If you feel like you can be extremely open with your therapist, and that's me for sure, I can tell this girl anything, and she doesn't judge me at all. And that's what I love the most about her. And also, we fit together culturally. So that's another tip. Consider the cultural fit. If it's important to you, find a therapist who understands your culture, your religion, or your personal background. And this can help in feeling more connected and understood. Also, their availability and accessibility. My therapist is virtual. I meet with her the same time every 2 weeks. Same time, same day, every 2 weeks. Make sure your schedule aligns. Make sure their schedule aligns with yours and they're easily reachable. I have her number. I can text her if I needed to, which I don't. I never text her. Like, if I'm having an issue, I utilize the tools that she's already given me, and then I journal about whatever the issue is. And that way, during our session, I can bring it up, because she always begins our session with, so what's new? Or what has happened in the past 2 weeks that you want to talk about? And I'll go in my journal and I'll look for those dates and say, oh, well, this happened, that happened, and this happened. The next thing, verify your cost and insurance coverage. Check whether the therapist accepts your insurance or offers a sliding scale for payments. Understand the financial commitment before beginning therapy. Trust your instincts. After a few sessions, trust your gut feeling. If something feels off or you don't feel a connection, it's okay to find someone else. Therapy is about your comfort and progress. And lastly, ask about their approach. Don't hesitate to ask how they approach therapy. Do they provide homework? Do they focus on short-term therapy? Do they focus on long-term therapy? Knowing their style can help you feel more aligned with their methods. Finding the right therapist is a process, and it's okay to take your time to find someone who truly, truly fits your needs. So I do hope that this video was very helpful for you. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you found it helpful. I also invite you to share in the comments your own experiences with therapy or any questions that you may have. I thank you guys for watching. I will see you guys on the next one. Bye.